Hi, I'm Jake Ray, and today in the Student Slant, we talked to sports editor Colin Gay about the ethics surrounding the reporting of the Urban Meyer investigation.
I can remember when the story broke about the Amazon orders of Zach Smith. I was going out with family for my birthday dinner, actually, and I'm sitting in like the lobby area of this restaurant waiting, and my phone blows up, and I'm like, oh, another Zach Smith story. Like, this is probably something I'm gonna have to like help edit. Like, we're probably gonna be writing a brief for the Lantern, and it turned out that it was not something we would be writing about because some honestly ethically poor decisions had been made by reporters, and Zach Smith's Amazon order history was all over the internet with pictures of his sex toys he had ordered, and now we all knew what kind of sex Zach Smith liked to have, and it was really unclear why we needed to know that. There was this loose tie that I can personally say I kind of saw why at first, maybe, like, because it's, he got sent to the Woody. But then when you see the pictures, I quickly realized I was wrong, and there was just no need. And then you just start seeing just full-on meltdown of debauchery on Twitter of people sharing Amazon sex toys, and there's just no need for that. And I quickly realized, so we're not writing a story about this. I can put my phone away and enjoy my dinner. And I don't think it got any better from there, as far as ethics are concerned with covering this whole Zach Smith and Urban Meyer story. My name's Zach Varda.
I'm Colin Gay.
And I'm Jake Ray, and this is the Student Slant. Originally, this story came out about Urban Meyer. Brett McMurphy published it on Facebook. No ethical problems there. It was an actual story. It needed to be reported. There was somebody on his staff, obviously, we all know, that had been abusing his wife. Urban had fired him. Allegedly. But Urban had fired him, but there was proof that, at least Brett McMurphy had proof that he knew about the allegations, and that was a violation of Title IX in Ohio. But that whole situation then sort of devolved where there's people from both sides. It became a huge debacle. And Brett McMurphy was not the only one with unethical decisions. You have people from Urban's side. Jeff Snook, who was more on Urban's defense, I guess, against that, also is making unethical decisions of publishing false information. There was just so much crazy reporting about this. What do you guys think about the situation?
I got to a point where it seemed like almost we knew when a Brett McMurphy or Jeff Snook story was coming, because they would tease it on either Twitter or something would leak in terms of, okay, something's coming this afternoon. And when you were talking about the Amazon story, I remember getting a call from Wyatt, the assistant sports editor of the Lantern, and he's saying, because I hadn't heard about it, I was going to cover a game for my summer internship at the Columbus Clippers stadium, and I was there, and I got a call, and he's like, "Have you seen this?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." "What is it? Is it something that I have to leave for?" And he's like, "Just read it." And I did, and I saw it. I was like, that was the point where I'm like, anything that was written by either Brett McMurphy or Jeff Snook, I decided personally, I would ask like the people in charge, but I just decided, I was like, it's really not worth reporting on. There's really nothing there nothing in that Amazon story was newsworthy for what the story needed to be. And that was the moment where I realized, I was like, not everything that is released about the story needs to be reported on by us.
Yeah, and he was taking inappropriate pictures at the White House, and I don't care about that. And it just got worse. It seems, that it became very clear that people had motives beyond reporting. Jeff Smith clearly wanted to defend Urban. Brett McMurphy seems to have a very, I don't mean this like in any kind of like suggestive way, a very close relationship with Courtney Smith, and he wants to to a fault at this point, make her the person that's in the right. And it got weird. And then Zach Smith was going on Twitter rants, which, like, I guess he has every right to do. But, like, then you have, like, outlets writing about, like, did you see Zach Smith meltdown on Twitter today? Like, we didn't run a story like that because, like, if people want to see that, they can see that. We don't need to write a story about what Zach Smith is tweeting when the man's clearly, going through an emotional and mentally trying time. He believes he's falsely accused. We don't know if he is or he isn't. It became clear that the media was getting involved in a toxic marital relationship. And I'm not one of those people that's like, what happens in a house isn't anybody else's business. But, like, we don't need to have marriage counseling on the front of newspapers. Like, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to see were laws broken, are there evidence of laws being broken, what are the police reports, what do the public records say, not, what is someone tweeting, and what was Zach Smith's mom posting on Facebook. Like, I don't care. Of course she's gonna send out a big defense of her son if she feels he's innocent, and that's her right. And I think any parent would do that, but that doesn't matter to us. And people just want to latch onto every little thing, and I guess I don't get it because I think it's unethical, bad reporting, bad decision making. But that is the pull of Ohio State football, where if anything looks like it's going to endanger the season or have an effect on the program, people are all over it. I mean, we have whole websites devoted to one sports team. So it's wild, and there's not a lot of – I don't think there's a lot of football programs where this would have happened like this, because Maryland killed a kid. Like, straight up killed a kid, and that story was out of the news in a week because it's Maryland football. Nobody cares about Maryland football. Something that is, even if the abuse was true, it's not on the same level as killing a kid, and we don't even know if it's true, can stay in the news for months because of the level of Ohio State.
This quickly became, I want to bring this up again because I think it's important. Initially, Brett McMurphy's reporting about Zach Smith and about what Urban Meyer knew, that was all valid reporting. Mm-hmm. And it was, in my opinion, very, very strange way to put the story out there on Facebook, which I don't think is, that's just strange. I never would expect to see a legitimate news story on someone's personal Facebook page. However,
not just a legitimate news story, but like a massive news story that has an effect on a whole university, a whole fan base that's one of the biggest fan bases in like the entire nation. So
because people forget, Brett McMurphy was an ESPN reporter. He was huge. He has sources. He was let go by ESPN, but he still, I would guess he hasn't let go of those sources. However, I don't know exactly what story made it this way, and I think it might have been the mix of his mom getting involved and even Courtney Smith's mom getting involved, and all these different stories about their opinions and what actually happened. And it honestly felt like a soap opera at some point. And it wasn't a news story anymore. It was almost like tabloid, he said, she said type things that, really there were no facts associated. I didn't know what to believe. And that's why I kind of, I read it for sure. And that's fair, we needed to make sure that we weren't missing anything. But it wasn't something that we at the Lantern felt was important to report on because there was no fact behind it.
Just like you said, you read the story. Journalists are supposed to write stories that they know their audience is going to want to read. So how do you, I guess for you both, balance that with like Brett McMurphy's story? I'm sure millions of people read that story about what he bought on Amazon and what was going on at the Woody with all his crazy stuff. How do you balance that ethically between making an article that's going to be read by millions and knowing that, okay, well, this probably isn't good to write? And that doesn't go just for Brett McMurphy. That's the same with Jeff Snook. There's certain things he knows that, did he really know if those things were completely true that he was reporting? That's unethical as well. So I guess, but he knows people were going to read it. So how do you balance that as a reporter?
So, yeah, ethically, legally, the Amazon stuff might have been violating the revelation of private facts. That might be a legal issue. Honestly, going beyond ethics and legals, I think it's an ethics and legal issues. For me, it's integrity. Like, do I want to be known as the guy who's just trying to get clicks? I mean, maybe Brett McMurphy's at that point where he's Brett McMurphy of Facebook at this point. Like when he's reporting this, he's at Stadium now. I don't really know a lot about Stadium. They're like a new thing. Interesting, I guess, anecdote. So I TA for a class we have here called Sports Media. Yesterday, Austin Ward and I can't remember the guy who runs it, Will something, came in from Letterman Row. And they really haven't done like any of those stories. And they said they started their site because they wanted to get away from clickbait. Austin Ward had been let go by ESPN 2 years ago. He spent time last year at a different website. I don't feel a need to name names, but he said that he felt that their business model was clickbait, and he decided to leave. That site's not even around anymore that he was at, so he was right. And he gave a very interesting thing where he says sometimes they will go, not even related to this story, they'll go to media days and they'll say, we don't put out a story that night because it just doesn't need to be put out. And it's not even like a controversial thing. He just said, like, not everything has to be a story. And at some point you have to make those decisions. Sure, the Lantern could have run something about Zach Smith's Amazon shopping cart, and it probably would have been one of our most viewed stories of this fall. It would have. It probably would have made our top 10 list when we got to the end of the semester. We said, what were our most viewed stories? It would have been one of our most viewed stories. That doesn't mean that's good. That doesn't mean we redo it. There has to be a level of integrity sometimes, and I just think it goes even beyond ethics, just to a base level of, like, what do you stand for as an organization?
And I think the main thing is, and I think the main thing people forgot with all of these side stories, the Amazon story with, Zach Smith's mom going on radio and just defending her son. I think the thing that people that got lost and what we were trying to do in terms of covering this situation was sticking and going by what we know. Do the police reports say? This is what you mentioned earlier, Zach, but what do the police reports say? What do the court records say? What did Urban Meyer say at Big Ten Media Day? I mean, what was said and what has been released? And I think that's something that really, that's all we knew at that point. We couldn't go to, our sources or anything in terms of to find information. I have never talked to Courtney Smith. I've never talked to Zach Smith's mom. They're going to other people. We only have, in terms of this story, public records and then what has been said out in the public. We did our own research, absolutely, but we weren't going to go in depth on a story if we didn't know for certain that it was true.
I think that's such a good point about the sources. We don't, Courtney Smith didn't come to us. I think really the only person she's talked to is Brett McMurphy. I don't think I've seen her talk to anybody else. Zach Smith's mom, we reached out to Zach Smith. He chose not to respond to us, which is obviously within his right. Absolutely. We're not going to write about something if we don't have sources, and that goes beyond this story. Look, we're a student newspaper. Sometimes it's hard for us to get sources. People, someone resigned from the Board of Trustees over the handling of Urban, Jeffrey Wadsworth. He only chose to speak to the New York Times. Did we reach out to him? Of course. He spoke to the New York Times, he doesn't feel the need to speak to a student newspaper, and that's fine. So we don't do reporting where we don't have the sources, and I just think, it was a focus coming to this year, it was a focus of last year's staff. What we can do is we can get public records. There's nothing that stops us from getting those. We have the time to devote to them. I think we're a paper that at this point really bases ourselves on public record reporting, getting the raw facts. And for me, that is something I can be proud of. If I go to interview, when I leave Ohio State and I leave the Lantern, I go, we did public records requests. We did public records reporting that, frankly, nobody else was doing. We were mentioned in the investigative report that Ohio State released for our public records requests that other people weren't making. And I think that's something we've really been able to hang our hat on here and something we can all be proud of as a staff.
With this situation, it was so, we've said it several times, but it was so wild with just everything going on, the different reporting coming out. How do you think the fan base kind of swayed this reporting both ways? I know that's kind of a tough question, but I really think that it had a very large impact on how things were reported and what people wanted to know that made these guys kind of make certain decisions that might have not been correct.
I think this might be. I have a little. I mean, so when we went to the alumni house to go cover the board of trustees meeting to decide, I don't know, I'll just say Urban Meyer's fate for the 2018 season and beyond, whether he was going to be let go or whether he was going to, continue to be the head coach starting right after that meeting. It took forever. It was open to the public, and you did see fans come. I mean, Tennessee Jeff was there at one point, super fan. That was just, who's a wild character. I think, but one of the main things that got me was, and I took a picture of this, and it was these freshmen students at Ohio State. They all get, starting this year, they have iPads, and they receive iPads from the university. And I think the main thing that got me was they were using their, whatever the app is, like Paint or something, to create signs on their iPads, holding them up saying, "Free Urban Meyer." Free, without any context whatsoever. Honestly, it seems to me that fans, they don't care what Urban Meyer knew. It just seems like they want their coach back. It doesn't matter about the story itself. They just want their coach back on the sidelines. And I think, especially reading the summary of the findings right after that decision was made at 10:30, that can be a little frightening. At least it was for me when I was reading what actually was decided on when they did decide the 3-game suspension for Urban Meyer. I think that's something. I mean, reading the summary of its findings, I was like, people were like, he got off. He was pissed. He was mad because he only got 3 games. But I mean, looking at the records themselves, I mean, it did seem. I don't know. It just seemed like it could have been a lot worse for him.
So talking about fans, it's an interesting thing for me. So I'm the campus editor. I don't report on sports. I still have the luxury of being an Ohio State fan. Colin's the sports editor. When you're a sports editor, you stop being a fan. You see, but this became a story where the campus section was helping report their sports stories, but we were helping report on it. So I'm in this situation where I'm, trying to help cover the urban stuff, but I'm still like outwardly on my social media Ohio State football fan. And I kind of have to then be like, all right, I got to go into the mode of how the sports desk goes and remove myself from that. So that was an interesting thing for me. And so a lot of my social media is still Ohio State fans in my feed because I'm, up until this, I'm still a fan because I'm not covering sports. So I have that luxury, I guess. And then it just got weird because you see all these fans with their takes. And like Colin said, I read the investigation, the summary of findings, and none of these people with their hot takes they haven't read the summary of findings. I'm not going to say what I do or do not think should have happened to Urban based on it. But I agree, it could have been worse. I think I don't. The board came to the decision they came to. It's not my job to judge that. It's my job to present it and present the evidence and what they found or other people decide. But it's pretty clear that the college football world at large, and even opposing fan bases who are criticizing Ohio State, haven't read it. The football fans aren't reading this, and it's I don't expect them to. That's not their job. We're journalists. We read it, and it's our job to tell them what was in there. But they don't want to know what was in there. Football games have started being played. I just don't think fans care. I'm not saying that they're callous to abuse. I just think that they've reached a point where it's oversaturated. They've been bombarded with things about, taking pictures of your genitals at the White House. They're over the story. Football's, being played on Saturdays again, and they're not going to take the time to go read some summary of findings. That was a great discussion. Make sure to join us next week for more student perspective on the Student Slant.